10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy Saturday. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to essentially try and do like a live video. Now, of course, obviously this is a live stream, but I want to do a live video, essentially making a video as I might otherwise, but doing it live so you guys can have a chance to interact, ask questions, anything like that. So I've got a whole list of things set up today that I want to go over, kind of the flow of the things that I want to talk about. And then if you have any questions or comments or anything, kind of as we're going through, I'll probably answer those kind of towards the middle, something like that. So hey Paul, welcome on. Or yeah, it's nice to have everybody. So yeah, let's go on ahead and let's get started. So first off, let's take a look at the crypto bubbles, and we can see here on the day, again, things still looking pretty rough. I think kind of a lot of what we're seeing right now is people are getting a little bit scared. The sentiment is pretty bad. If you haven't been on any of the social media, people are pretty upset. There's a lot of this like, oh, well, we were promised an alt season and it's probably just not going to happen at this point. In my mind, that is music to my ears, because I've always kind of maintained the like thought that if we have everybody expecting an alt season, it's just not going to happen. And so this is actually really, really good news in my opinion. Now, there's a lot of things happening all right now that I think is really, really important to understand just how close we could potentially be to an absolutely wild move happening within crypto. And coupled with the sentiment shift, I think it's looking pretty possible. So let's take a look at that, and we'll kind of see how that ends up looking at or working out. So let's go take a look. The first thing we have is the annual inflation rates. Inflation has been one of those things that's been very difficult, and it's been a major concern of the Fed, essentially, right? So actually, let's zoom this in a little bit. Actually, there we go. Oops. Yeah, that's good enough. So we can see here in 2025, we have 3%, 2.8%, 2.4%, 2.3%, 2.4%. If we look at all of 2024, we were essentially sitting in the like mid threes to eventually kind of coming back down into like the high twos. So we have been essentially seeing that interest rates are, or I guess, sorry, excuse me, inflation rates are actually trending downward, which is a really good thing. We can see here back in like 2021, we really started to see interest rates or inflation rates, inflation rates spike, inflation rates continue to spike. We saw it come back a little bit down in 2023, and then we essentially started to kind of come back down in 2024, and it's getting closer to that 2% number that people have been looking for. We can see essentially 2021, the last half of it in 2022 was all pretty rough. And then about the first third of 2023, and then since then we've been kind of on the trail back to getting towards that 2%. We're getting quite close. We're within striking distance at this point. Essentially, the argument right now at this point would essentially mean we're getting to the level at which it should make sense from a data perspective that we start to see rate cuts here soon. So that leads us into the next thing, which is, of course, people are always talking about rate cuts. What happens there? Because essentially there's three main things that we need to be looking at in terms of like economic data, right? First one, inflation, because that impacts essentially how the Fed is going to move. Second is going to be interest rates. That is going to impact the borrowing rate and essentially the amount of money that people are willing to put at risk. And then the third, we need to look at essentially what the Fed is doing with their balance sheet, because of course, unfortunately, the Fed, it becomes a bigger and bigger buyer within the markets. And so we need to see if they're buying or selling, because if they're buying, it's obviously good for the markets. If they're selling, probably bad for the markets, because there's going to be a very large institutional pressure essentially on one direction or the other. We want it to be in the direction that we're going, right? And so I guess we want it to be in the opposite direction of what we're going. So, if they're buying, that's good. That means we want to be in risk assets. If they're selling, probably not the best. It means we maybe want to stick or stay away from risk assets. So second thing, as I mentioned, we are looking at interest rates. So we can see for the July meeting, it's looking almost certain, or I guess I should say very likely, that we do not see any changes at all with interest rates. We see about a 90% chance of interest rates staying exactly the same. If we look at September, it starts to look maybe a little bit more likely that we see a rate cut. I believe after this most recent Fed meeting, they did still mention that 2 rate cuts were kind of on the agenda for 2025. With that being said, one would probably need to happen in September. If it didn't, then if they are to hit that 2 rate cut target, then October and December would have to happen for sure. So we can see here in September, it's fairly likely, or I guess it's the most likely that we see a 1.25% rate cut. Excuse me. There is also the kind of second most likely event that nothing happens, and then there's also a 0.5% rate cut being unlikely but possible, at least for the forecast that we are seeing here. Now, next we have the target rate probabilities for October. This one is essentially putting it at about 50% that we would see either 0.25% of a rate cut or nothing, no change if we get that rate cut in September. And then the next most likely after that is going to be in this 0.5% rate cut, again, from where we are now, which could mean an additional 0.25% rate cut happening in that October timeframe, with, again, the third most likely outcome being that we still see no rate cuts coming into the end of the year, and then a very unlikely but possible chance that we see 3 rate cuts coming in October by, however you split those between, September and October, up to you. And then here we have the last one in December, where we have kind of the most likely outcome being that 375 to 400, which again is that second rate cut. The next most likely is 1 rate cut. Next most likely after that is 3 rate cuts. Most likely after that is 0. And then after that, the least likely of them all, though still, I guess, very unlikely, but possible in a way, is that 4th rate cut back in December. So that's kind of where we're sitting at for rate cuts. So right now, we're sitting at a point where the most likely outcome is that we do see 2 rate cuts. This would be good for markets overall because the Fed is starting to make borrowing a little bit cheaper. The US, of course, has a ton of debt. This is going to save the US a bunch of money. That should be very good for the economy. Again, there's I think for every full point cut, there is about $300 billion saved annually. Just that's how much the US debt is. Obviously, we're not looking at 4 cuts. There's only a 2% chance that that's actually happening by the end of the year, at least as of right now. But that would be something that would save the US government a ton of money and potentially add to GDP growth, potentially. So now the third thing we are looking at here is the Fed balance sheet. We can see essentially there was, after COVID, a massive buying spree from the Fed, going from about $3.75 trillion to over $9 trillion, or I guess almost $9 trillion at its peak. And then since then, basically since like April of 2022, we've seen the Fed consistently selling off their debt over the past several years. What we can see, though, actually, is we have seen a little bit of a tick up here. We're about 6.67 trillion here, and this is 6.68 trillion. So the Fed actually doing a little bit of buying over the past little bit, which is pretty interesting to see. They've not given any indication that they have stopped quantitative tightening, which again is the Fed selling off their balance sheet. So even though we're seeing a little bit of a tick up here, this could just be probably some like maybe short-term accounting things, or maybe some structural things that they're needing to do on their end. I don't expect that we should be going into quantitative easing quite yet. We'll have to see exactly when this stops. They haven't given any like super firm timelines. I think July of 2025, which would be about, I guess, end of July would be right about here. That has been kind of some initial indications of when that could happen. I have this running actually all the way through the middle of October, right after we actually see our first rate cut. So it's hard to say exactly for sure when this is going to happen. But what we are seeing right now is the slope is, of course, decreasing a little bit and is continuing to kind of shallow out a bit. So that's kind of what we're seeing so far. I think right now, as you can see, like inflation looking good, probably very close to where we want to be. Rate cuts looking good, probably very close to where we want to be. Fed balance sheet looking decent, probably getting closer to where we want to be, which is, again, them not selling anything. Buying would be even better, but I just don't think we're in a point at where that could happen. So this is all kind of what we're seeing right now in an otherwise pretty like right now, the market is looking pretty challenging. But if we look at a lot of the fundamental things that are going on right now, this is very, very good news. And we're seeing a lot of things that I think are kind of all structurally really looking to be quite bullish for crypto. And then we also have some specific things as it relates to the crypto market itself. The most important one, in my opinion, being the Genius Act, which was passed. We can see here stablecoins are already just passing $250 billion in total, like total value, I guess. And what we can see is this is essentially all before a legal framework actually exists for them to operate within. So the fact that we've seen $250 billion accrue over the past several years, particularly you can see within the past about 18 months, really just rocketing to the upside. The fact that we've actually seen this happen, in my opinion, is a huge deal. And now that we have an actual like legal and like regulatory framework for stablecoins to exist, I think this is going to be massive for both stablecoins and then subsequently crypto over the next several months and even years. Really, I think we are going to see the adoption of stablecoins absolutely rocket. We've already heard that banks, several major banks, have discussed launching their own stablecoin if, again, big if, regulation was passed for it. We have seen regulation pass, and so this is something that I think is going to be very, very bullish. Now, the other thing I want to kind of switch gears, so you can see we've got the like macroeconomic, we've got the fiscal framework, all of this stuff is starting to shape up pretty well. We're seeing regulatory framework actually getting passed and things shaping up pretty well there. We can also see from a technical perspective, things still looking okay. Now, this is a report from CoinGlass. You can see up here, this is the bull market peak indicators, essentially sell at the top, right? This has 30 different like top checks that you can see that if they get hit, it like essentially adds a check mark and it should tell you if you should sell or not. Of course, this is not financial advice. You can't just like blindly rely on indicators to do your buying and selling, but this is more importantly here to make a point. And what we can see here is there's 30 possible indicators that could have been hit. We have hit 0. So there's just really not been, even though we have seen some nice moves from Bitcoin, even though we have seen some relatively isolated runs from altcoins, we really haven't actually seen anything that special going on here. I mean, if we look at a lot of this type of stuff, there's like, I mean, we're pretty much like not close to any of this at all. We can see some things are ticking up a little bit, but where it needs to be in terms of a reference, we're not even close. Take a look at the couple ones up here. The AHR 999 index should be at 4. We're at 0.98, not even close. The pi cycle top would be at 167,000. We are at 103,000, not even close. The Puel multiple should be over 2.2. We are at 1.3 or just under 1.3, not even close. Bitcoin rainbow chart is at 3, should be over 5, not even close. Days of ETF net outflows 0, should be over 10, not even close. I mean, you could see there's like nothing here that is really even remotely close to kind of like pushing us over that level, which is why none of these 30 top indicators have actually hit. Now, if we were sitting at a point where, let's be super conservative and let's say 10 were hit, or maybe 15 were hit, or even worse than that, 20 were hit, then maybe I think there would be an indication that like, yeah, we perhaps have seen the top for this cycle. We haven't seen any of that yet. And so I think part of what I'm seeing here is like, there's just no historical backing or no historical basis. There's also no macroeconomic basis as to why we should think that the cycle is over. Now, of course, it could be, right, in a market where, liquidity is bad, risk on assets just have not done well at all. Maybe this is just like, it's kind of like the forgotten cycle, right? Potentially. But what we've seen so far, I don't think has any historical precedent for what we've seen. And so that's one of the really big things that I want to kind of focus on with looking at this bull market peak indicators, is because it's very, very clear we have not seen anything like that happen. Now, again, I'm going to kind of pull out of the large market and I'm going to kind of zoom in on a specific project, ICP. Many of you are probably very strong ICP fans. I think ICP is one that I think in the very, very near future has a really, really interesting next month or two. I'm super interested to see how ICP does over the next month or so. They've got a ton of really interesting things coming. all while the market is super, super negative and pessimistic. And so we can see here the first thing, we talked about this actually on a video the other day. Chain fusion now extends to Solana. So now you can be on Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana via ICP, which essentially allows for like cross-chain anything, right? Cross-chain swaps, next generation lending, interoperable gaming. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that you can do. You can see here ICP smart contracts can now interact with Solana as well as Bitcoin and Ethereum. So the interoperability is, in my opinion, about to get to a critical mass where it's going to really, really make sense to potentially use ICP as kind of that base layer. In addition to this, less than a month from now, we are going to be seeing Caffeine AI come out, which is essentially like a thing that helps you write your own dApps, right? You have a thing that helps you write your own dApps automatically on a chain that integrates with all the other biggest chains. I think this could be something that is quite crazy. And so, but like, this is an isolated example of what's actually happening. What is happening right now on ICP is objectively better than what was happening on ICP 1 year ago, right? And I think that's the case for a lot of different crypto coins. We can see this probably with Sui. We can see this probably with Ethereum / Base. You know, Base is actually going to have an upgrade coming here soon where you essentially can like buy anything on Base directly through Coinbase, which is an unbelievably huge, that's unbelievably huge news. And I think because there's so much retail access to Coinbase, some of the biggest winners in the Base or in the like crypto ecosystem could be on Base for that exact reason. But hopefully you can see there's so many different things happening right now that are very, very bullish. Right now, it is objectively a better time to live in crypto right now than it was 1 year ago. And that just proves to show that like there's a lot of actual like benefit happening. There's an actual development and growth and actual like change happening within the crypto ecosystem. And the fact that people are so bearish just because we're not seeing the short-term price move up, I think that to me looks like a pretty good thing, and that's a pretty promising problem to have. So anyway, that's kind of all of the data that I had to go over with you today, hopefully kind of setting the stage as to why I think we could be really, really close to something crazy. In my mind, there's only one really like rake that we could step on, and that is the Iran-Israel World War III possible issue. That obviously is a very delicate situation that could spiral out of control incredibly quickly. And so I think we need to be very, very careful. And hopefully all of the powers that be in the world are committed to not actually doing anything too crazy. And we can have a pretty calm next several years. Because of course, regardless of all the, bullish macro indicators and bullish development that's happening within crypto, all of that type of stuff, all of that essentially goes by the wayside if we do have a global, hot conflict as it pertains to war. So that's something that, of course, we need to be very, very careful of. So anyway, that's kind of what I have today as far as the live video format. That was all the information that I had prepared. I'm going to start going through comments, looking through all the, and if you have any questions or anything that you have to add or answer, stuff like that, I'll be going through all of those, and then we'll probably wrap it up here in a little while, just kind of depending on how the conversation goes. So let's see. MD Fajul Fakir. Hopefully I did not mispronounce your name. Hello, how's it going? Hamster Zombie, hello. ICP, simply the best. Yes, I would agree. Price prediction this year for ICP. That's a hard one, honestly. I'm going to reserve my comments on that, or maybe I'll give you two price predictions. I think for ICP, there's two ways it goes, right? The first way is Caffeine launches, people think it's cool. It actually does kind of what it looked like in the demos. I think so far, there's no real indication that it's not going to do what it was showing it could do in the demos, but you just never know for sure. That's something that is quite difficult. It's quite a difficult like line to walk, is like, how real are the demos? Because I've seen many of demos where they like, they say they can do stuff, and you actually like get it in your hands and it can't really do it, and it's got a whole bunch of bugs, it's got errors and all this type of stuff. Depending on like where we are on that spectrum for Caffeine, I think is going to make a massive difference. I also think the chain fusion integration with Solana I'm not thinking that was a coincidence. I think it was a really very, very strong priority for them to get that completed before Caffeine AI actually gets launched, because now they essentially have the claim we can integrate with all the major chains, right? I mean, or at least the three biggest ones. I think adding in BNB and maybe Sui potentially, and maybe AVAX, like those would be kind of some of the three larger chains that if you could integrate with, that would be a huge deal. And so, obviously still some work to be done there, but as far as capturing the majority of the value and the majority of the activity within crypto, they have the three chains that do that already. And now you can build products on top of that. So I think if people see that is really like the adoption is driven really well, the cycle rate goes absolutely parabolic, ICP starts to become deflationary, there's a whole bunch of hype speculation on all this type of stuff, then I think we could see a really, really insane move out of ICP. The magnitude of insanity that we see, hard to say. ICP is fully what am I trying to say? Fully diluted at this point. So all of the like investors, all of the unlocks, all those tokens, everything is already done. So any like price pressure like that happens to the upward side isn't going to have that kind of counteracting like sell pressure when tokens are unlocked. So I think that's a really, really good thing to see. And I think that's something that we should always continue to like keep in mind. However, when this does actually start to kick off with caffeine and everything, it's hard to say for sure where it ends up. I think we could see something between maybe the like $20 to $50 range if things go well, but not great. And then I think we could see something in maybe the $100 range if things go just absolutely fantastic. But a lot of it really does depend on the state that Caffeine AI launches and if it's actually like practically useful within the first couple of weeks. So that's kind of my main prediction there. Again, if it kind of launches and it's not in the state that we suggest or we expect, things like that, then I think maybe we'll probably just continue to chop around it and bleed away, because there is that continuous inflation pressure from the staking of ICP holders. So I think there's kind of one of two routes to go. And honestly, I think if chain fusion comes, or if caffeine comes out and it's like kind of a mess and it's not like anybody expected, I think there's going to be some major sell-offs there. And I also think that this would be something where if you are an ICP holder, you probably need to be looking within the next maybe 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to be a longer road than what we might think otherwise. So those are kind of my my predictions there. Let's see, Paul. Yeah, no problem. Hopefully you guys found that kind of like live video format kind of interesting or helpful. If you did, obviously let me know. And also please feel free to like the stream and comment, do all that type of good stuff. It does help me get pushed out to more people and things like that. So let's see. Jaime, I'm hoping it's Jaime. Let me know if I mispronounced. Hello, how's it going? Hopefully you're having a nice Saturday. I guess potentially Sunday, depending on where you're located. Let's see. Hey, Kate, how long do you think we stay in this downtrend? It's hard to say for sure. I think right now the market's looking for clarity on clarity of direction, right? And what we don't know right now really is what that looks like. Obviously, there's a bunch of like fundamentally bullish things happening within the crypto market, but the issue is there's a really, really massive lingering issue ahead, which is the Israel-Iran situation. If that does kind of boil out of control, if the U.S. gets drawn into some protracted engagement, I think there's also a kind of a big kind of asterisk on that as well. I think if maybe the US gets involved with limited strikes to help take out nuclear facilities or whatever, I still don't think that's a good thing, and I think that does actually carry a lot of risk. But that's probably less risky than the US getting involved in some protracted very long drawn out engagement, because obviously the longer that draws out, the worse that is, and the more likely something crazy happens, because you have to remember the Iranians do have pretty strong relations relationships with both the Russians and the Chinese. The Russians are attacking Ukraine already. The Chinese have had their eye on Taiwan. So I do think there is a world in which, potentially this kind of spirals out of control. You have the Chinese attacking Taiwan, and, Iran and Israel continues to get larger. And maybe you have, Pakistan starting to attack, India, and everything kind of blows up, and it's just a terrible thing kind of everywhere worldwide. And so, that's one of the things that I don't think that we want to see. And so I think we need to be very, very careful. And hopefully, like I said earlier on in the video, that, world leaders will exercise caution and not make a miscalculation on some of this stuff, because that could be a really, really terrible miscalculation. So that's kind of the way I see it. That is what realistically the market is waiting on right now. If that has a quick and peaceful resolution, I think the path is clear, and we could see an absolutely insane move kind of towards the end of the year. If this kind of continues to devolve and spiral out of control, that's potentially a very large problem that could force us into kind of a multi-year downtrend for crypto. And realistically, I think the top would have already been in at this point if that does kind of continue to happen. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Hard to say for sure exactly, but hopefully that kind of helps in terms of right now the market's just looking for clarity. I don't think this is as much technical as it is purely macro. I think if the conflict in the Middle East is resolved tomorrow, I think we probably see a very strong chance that the crypto breaks out to the upside, because the major risk that we have lingering has since gone away. Let's see. Bitcoin. Let's see. Bitcoin to 25K in play. Then it will Iran candle to 50 to 375K guarantee. Okay, so you're essentially, let's see how, yeah. So I think you're essentially seeing that there would be some sort of flash crash potentially that would send Bitcoin really, really low. And then of course, after that, whatever resolution that we have, I would love if this would happen. I think if this would happen, I would buy an absolute fortune in Bitcoin. But I just think that there's too much at stake here, and there's too many institutions at play. I don't realistically think we would get Bitcoin to 25K. The only way I could see that is somehow maybe we have a protracted downtrend, and maybe something like MicroStrategy starts to default on their convertible debt, and that kind of essentially has like a domino effect. I think that's probably the only way we realistically see this. Otherwise, I think there's too much institutional demand. There's too many institutions. I don't think it would ever get to that level, but we'll see, potentially. Bugatti, what's your number? How can we chat it up? Yeah, so if you guys want to hang out and, kind of have more direct interaction with me, I actually did just make my Discord free. If you check in the link in the description below, I do have that Patreon. If you just check the Patreon out, you can sign up for free, and then you can come in and join the server. I'm trying to grow the server right now. It's still a little small, but if any of you are interested in having a little bit more one-on-one interaction, you want to ask me questions, outside of the cadence of me doing a live stream or making a video or whatever, feel free to do that. Like I said, it's all in the description if you are interested. So, thanks for asking, Bugatti. Well, that's where you can find me, and join on in. Alrighty, so I think we're coming up past the half-hour mark. If anybody, I'll wait around for a little bit to see if anybody has any questions. But otherwise, kind of the main thing I was looking to do today was kind of do that live video format, answer any questions that people had kind of on the back end of that. But overall, hopefully you can see, kind of based on the things that I put together today, there's a lot of really, really bullish things happening. We just really have kind of that major international kind of question mark that we need to get through. And then after that, we'll see. There's sky's the limit on kind of what could happen, and all of the really bullish things that are kind of already happening or kind of stacking up in our favor. So again, like I said, we'll have to get to that point. I do think that there is a world where, especially right now with AI and with, kind of some of the issues that everybody else is having internationally, if we were to start to lower interest rates and drop essentially the risk premium, I think like basically all of the risk assets that are interesting right now are in the US. And so I think if we started to see that happening, we can see an absolutely massive amount of inflow, both domestically and internationally, which I think would bring on the alt season of everybody's dreams that people have been talking about for forever. So something that I'm something that I'm thinking about. Let's see. We got KDUC at $2 a BEC. Let's check it out. Sorry, I'm a little congested today. I don't know if you guys can hear my congestion, but if you can, I apologize. All righty. So let's look at the ZBEC chart. Actually, I'm going to go to CoinGecko. I think that's probably a better way to look. I was going to check it out on BTCC, but I think CoinGecko probably makes a little bit more sense. All righty, let's pull this up. So let's just do some quick math. This is generally how I get there, right? So of course I understand that ZBEC has a burn function. So, you know, if we wanted to, like, we'll work the math in on that to get there. But a $2 ZBEC, so we do that divided by 0.0037 is what we'll just do right now. Okay, so for us to get to a $2 ZBEC, we would need a 540x. The current market cap fully diluted valuation, again, you know, not much of a difference there, but it is $371 million. So if we were to 500x, we would need to get to $200 billion in market cap, essentially. That would be larger than XRP. It would not be quite as large as Ethereum. So that is something that, you know, potentially is possible, probably not in the short term. Now, of course, also we have the burn function as well. So let's just say we get back to like maybe let's say 50% burn. This is now only $100 billion in market cap instead of the 200 billion in market cap. So that is something that I would think about as well, is like, you know, how much do we expect the burn to happen? In my personal opinion, if ZBEC gets to $2, it's not inside of probably 3 or 4 years from now, at least. And we would need to see some pretty crazy things happening with the ZBEC token in terms of, you know, burns and adoption, and, you know, basically everybody, you know, in the crypto space is using ZBEC as like their payroll network of choice. And, you know, maybe it starts to have kind of like real world adoption, a lot of that type of stuff. I think it's not impossible, but particularly inside of like, let's say the next year, I think that would be, I have a little bit of a hard time seeing how that could happen. All righty. Do you think the ICP bottom is in? ICP bottom, I hope. Hard to say for sure. I think realistically, Jaime, I think what we're seeing right now, and let's actually switch back over here, and let's do ICP. Okay, we'll let this load up for a second. All right. So if we look at ICP, it's holding this bottom pretty well. You can see here we've kind of come back down, and we've not actually hit recent bottoms here, but we've kind of holding this relatively decently. I think we are at the key point. Again, this is a key level of support here. And given the fact that we're kind of sitting on this key level of support prior to the launch of caffeine, I think if we see caffeine go well, then yes, I think that this is probably the bottom that we have seen come in. If the launch of caffeine is not particularly well received, then I think it's probably very likely and very possible that we break through this level, and we're probably looking to find a bottom somewhere that we saw back here in like late 2023. It would kind of be my expectation. But if the launch of caffeine goes well, then yes, I think we will see a really, really strong move. We could even kind of get back into this like $7 range potentially, and start to put in some more volume in the $7 range, and start to reestablish that support. I think that's entirely possible. But right now, yes, I think it seems to me that the bottom is in if the caffeine AI launch is received well. So that's kind of how it looks to me in terms of ICP and the price prediction of that. So what is my thoughts on ZBEC, holding ZBEC for 4 years, taking no profits? This is a really good question. Let me caveat this right now with this is not financial advice. You, of course, need to make your own decisions. There are many of you who may disagree with what I'm about to say, which is totally fine. That is why you should make your own financial decisions and not trust me. This is just purely my opinion of what I am planning to do with my own money in this cycle. Okay. With that all disclaimed and said and everything, I want to kind of make it clear that for me, crypto is not like the stock market, right? Crypto is very, very speculative. It has a large level of, it's like the stock market was when like SPACs were around, right? I mean, there was no actual real fundamental analysis being done with SPACs. It was like, this is a bucket of money, and I think this bucket of money is going to buy something that is good. And so I'm going to buy it now for more than what the bucket of money is worth. For those of you who are unfamiliar with SPACs, essentially, a SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. So basically, as I was kind of alluding to, they were a bucket of money that was sitting there, and they were going to look to try and buy some company out there, buy some private company and take them public. It was kind of the whole point there. And there was a massive amount of speculation that, you know, oh, well, what if X company buys this company and takes them public? Wow, we'd make so much money. And it's purely speculation. So how this relates to crypto is none of that has any sort of financial analysis or fundamental analysis or anything to do with anything, right? I mean, that is purely, okay, well, this bucket of money is worth $1 million. I'm going to pay 2 because I think it's probably going to do something cool at some point. That's basically how crypto is. And so even with something like ZBCN, where I think it has a really strong vision, it's got a strong use case, I can see how it gets there. Holding something like that for 4 years, I think is quite difficult, because what you're going to start seeing is I guarantee you I guess I can't guarantee anything because I can't predict the future, but I am highly confident in the fact that at some point between the next 4 years, between here and then, ZBCN is probably going to be lower than what it is now. Just if future or past indications kind of hold, that is almost certain. And so my opinion is, especially when like retail starts to come in and things start to get a little bubbly, like 2021, for example. In 2021, I knew for a fact, I was like, yes, I have certain holdings that I think are going to do absolutely wonderfully. I wasn't as educated then as I am now. And so, you know, some of them had massive unlocks happening that I don't think price will probably ever get back to that level. But that's okay. We were learning. But essentially what I was seeing is like, this is going to be better in the future. But the problem is what happens if you see something, let's say, for example, ZBCN goes to $1. Do I realistically think ZBCN should be, you know, $100 billion company right now? Absolutely not. So it would be my opinion that I would be selling out of that as fast as humanly possible. Even, you know, it might go to $2. Maybe I won't sell out of 100%. Maybe it goes to $2. Great, we make even more money. But there becomes a certain point where you have to think, okay, this is actually not reasonable for what it is today. Particularly with something like ZBCN, you know, that it's not like they're making a ton of money. It's not like they're using their profits to buy back tokens. There's no real mechanism for like a flywheel effect to grow the value in their tokens. And to be clear, this is not just for ZBCN. This is like every altcoin ever. So in my mind, it's like, if we start to see something really, really frothy happening, I don't really care what it could do in the future. ICP is another great example. I love ICP. I think it'll probably be more valuable in the future than it is from now. It might even be more valuable in the future from what it is at the peak of this bull market. The problem is, I don't care, because it's probably going to come down 90+%, and then I can get back in if I'm interested at that point. So there's 2 things you need to kind of hold in. You need to hold kind of in line with each other. One is, what is this worth long term? What should this be worth now? And I think that's what I use, or what I wish I would have used last cycle, that I'm going to be using this cycle to essentially help me like weigh some of this a little bit better. What is ICP worth long term? $1,000. Okay. What is it worth right now? $10. Okay, what's the price? 100. Okay, I'm probably selling all my ICP, right? That's another example. Again, you know, we can insert altcoin here. I think, you know, it kind of applies to all of them. But in my opinion, if we kind of see the level of alt season that could happen, and if we see the level of like performance from these altcoins that could happen, I am 100% going to be selling out of everything. And of course, I'll let you guys know as I'm doing that and if it starts to make sense. But for right now, at least, that's kind of my plan. Let's see. Oh yeah, appreciate it, Jaime. Alrighty, so yeah, that's kind of what we got. I'll stick around for another couple minutes. What if Zebek is at $10? Yeah, miracles can happen, I suppose, but I would say basically not going to happen. That would be $1 trillion market cap unless there's some ridiculous deflationary pressure on the token supply. Even then, like I still don't like deflationary tokenomics. There's a reason inflation exists within kind of the modern monetary system. I know there are some people that fight me on this. I understand that. But the whole point of inflation being introduced into the economic ecosystem is you have to do something with your money. That is more productive for the world than you not doing something with your money, right? If something is deflationary, it is in your best interest to not actually do anything with your money. That is kind of the key point there. And so what we need to understand is like people like deflationary because it's like, oh, if I just do nothing with my money, then it'll be more valuable. It's like, yeah, like, but then nobody's going to use it because it's not in your best interest to use it. So that's why I really don't like the deflationary structures. I'm quite skeptical of basically all of them, just because I don't think like just study game theory and study what the best, like what makes the most sense. And I just don't think that that makes sense. So do I buy Big Bear AI? Never heard of it, so no. But yeah, I could take a look at it and see. I haven't heard of it so far. So, but I do appreciate all of you guys, with your recommendations and things like that. I find a lot of really interesting things from all of you based on your recommendations. Onyx Coin and Zebek being two of the bigger ones. I think those have been pretty interesting. And I'm appreciative to all of you for helping me find some of these cool coins and things like that. So I hope you guys understand that it is a two-way street. I try to find things to bring to you guys, and if you find things that bring to me, I try to give them a little bit more visibility if I think that they're interesting and cool. So it's a stock. Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. So yeah, that definitely seems pretty interesting. So overall, I think AI over the next several years is going to kind of be everything. I think we'll probably see some pretty insane valuations coming from AI stocks. Again, if we get a better, a more favorable fiscal environment, I do think that we will see probably just an absolutely ridiculous run. Crypto stocks, everything. I think people in AI, in certain AI stocks could make a fortune. I think people in certain cryptos could make a fortune. I think there's a lot of things coming. The other thing that I did kind of not mention in my kind of live video type of format was we've seen crypto IPOs do incredibly well this cycle as well. Circle was one that did absolutely incredibly. I actually have not kept up on Circle. Let's go take a look and see what Circle's doing right now. Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah. So it's up like 8x from its IPO price, and it IPO'd like 2 weeks ago. That's absolutely insane. I cannot believe that. I was looking at getting in at $100. Here, let me change this. Yeah, so I see Circle. I was looking at buying in at kind of around this range, about $100 ish. And I was like, oh no, it's already gone up like 3x since its IPO. I'm not going to get in. And then it's gone up another 2x from that. That's ridiculous. But you can see like this is the type of stuff right now that I find and I think is a little strange. So for example, you could see like it's a $58 billion market cap. That's not unreasonable, I don't think. But the price, like the price to earnings ratio is 2,400. That is ridiculous. Now, of course, maybe people are pricing in some really, really positive kind of forward-looking stuff here, but yeah, a PE ratio, to give you guys context, the PE average within the S&P 500, I believe, is between like 15 to 19, and this is 2,400. So that's obviously quite ridiculous. So, but that's the thing is like, is this a bubble, or is Circle just going to absolutely rocket over the next couple years? And I mean, honestly, I could see both. I could see both very clearly. Where do I live? I live in the US. So I actually live in Utah. So for those of you familiar with the US, Utah, basically, those who aren't familiar with the US, I say it's close to Las Vegas in LA, just because those are the places that people actually know. James, Jerry Banfield just left YouTube. You're going to take his place for ICP content. When do you think ICP is going to start going up in price? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that Jerry left YouTube. Do you know why he left YouTube? I'm kind of interested to know. But yeah, I mean, I would love to take his place. I mean, Jerry's kind of like, he's like the ICP guy. So if I could be the ICP guy, that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, I've always kind of like, Jerry's definitely a lot more convicted, or like he's an ICP maxi. I would not call myself an ICP maxi. I wouldn't call myself in anything maxi, frankly. I think Bitcoin has its pros and cons. I think stable coins have their pros and cons. I think crypto as a whole has its pros and cons. I try to be pretty measured with my reactions and takes on those types of things. So but yeah, when do I think it's going to start going up in price? James, I pretty much am pretty confident that it's going to depend on what happens with the launch of caffeine. I think if the launch of caffeine goes well, we're going to see some ridiculous moves. If the launch of caffeine does not go well, probably not going to see anything too inspiring. So that's kind of my thought with ICP. I think right now a lot of it is just kind of wait and see, and we'll just see what happens. Jerry's been leaving YouTube for many years, months, and days. I have seen that he has taken some breaks before, but yeah, I'm interested to know if this is going to be like a permanent deal or what. But yeah, I know he has thoughts about like centralized stuff and things. So I was wondering if maybe he's moving to like a new platform, like a Rumble or a I don't know, some of these other ones, X or stuff like that. So I was wondering, but yeah, not a problem, Bugatti. Totally happy to answer questions. Obviously, that's why I like doing these. That's why I like doing these live streams. I like interacting with you guys more and answering questions real time. Hopefully, you like the kind of live video to kind of set the stage of what I'm kind of thinking about, kind of a recap on the week, maybe even like a forward-looking analysis on what we could see over the next couple of weeks or months. Let me know what you guys thought about that. Jerry put his life savings in ICP. So crazy. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you got to respect the conviction. But I come from the like traditional finance world. So I like all through school and stuff, I got like diversification and position management and all that stuff like beat into me. So I just don't think that we could do that, or that I could do that personally. So that's something that I have a bit of a difficulty with. But yeah, I mean, honestly, more power to him. And honestly, what's the saying? To the victor goes the spoils. I mean, I think if ICP goes to $100, $1,000, 10,000, whatever insane price prediction people want to throw out, there would be nobody more deserving of it than Jerry, because Jerry has been like an 110% convicted person on ICP forever. So, yeah, I think if ICP does well, he stands, he should benefit from it, because he has been very, very, very vocal on ICP for a long time. Do you think the reason Say is pumping is because of how well Circle is doing? I don't know, honestly. I need to look a little bit more into it, because I know Say's been doing quite well. I haven't really looked too much, just because in crypto there's so many things happening all at once that you kind of have to pick and choose what you pay attention to and what you follow, just to make sure that you're keeping up with things. Say is one that is I've just kind of left it off the radar, and I haven't really done too much to look into it, just because I focus on so many already. But I don't know. I'd have to look a little bit more closely into that one, because I'm just not sure what kind of the situation is there. Let's see. I appreciate your ICP content. I do believe in ICP very much. All regards, long-term 1773 stake for 8 years. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you very much, James. I appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys like my ICP content. I try to stay very measured in terms of my thoughts and reactions to it. I am all about being super bullish on stuff, but I think if you become like too bullish, it can be a little bit of a detriment. So I try kind of hard to not do that, and at least stay measured as much as possible. So I do appreciate that. Yeah, that's a decent bit staked. I think if we see ICP do what we think it could, that'll be definitely quite a nice bag. So great job. I also believe in ICP. I think ICP has an amazing opportunity to do something pretty nuts. If it happens or not, though, who's to say for sure? There's a lot of things that can go right. There's also a lot of things that can go wrong. That's why I personally, I size my position accordingly. I mean, ICP is my largest altcoin holding, but is not my largest holding at all. My largest holding would probably be Bitcoin for sure. And then after that, I think it's probably Ethereum. And yeah, I think it's Ethereum. And then I have ICP, and I think it's like Solana or something like that. But yeah, no, and a lot of like these smaller ones too, I usually do pretty small positions. So I've probably gone a little bit larger than I would normally on a coin like ICP. But I do think that just, yeah, the amount of research that I've done, the amount of time I've spent kind of following it, a lot of that type of stuff, I think it seems to make sense to me. So anyway, yeah, really appreciate all your guys' time and joining. I know this is at least for me, it's a Saturday afternoon. I appreciate all of you taking the time to join in, and spending your afternoons or evenings or mornings or wherever you are in the world with me. Do appreciate that. So I'm probably going to go ahead and just wrap it up here, kind of right under that hour mark. I'll be back doing it next week. I'm looking kind of for like Thursday afternoons is generally what I'm going to try to do. Last week I had an appointment that messed with that. So, but generally Thursday afternoons is what I'm trying to do, but I'm trying to do one live stream a week is kind of my plan. So, feel free, join in, look out for whenever that happens, and we'll keep talking about whatever else there is. And then also, like I said, if you guys want to just kind of talk to me more real time, I do just check out that link in the description below to the Discord. It's free. So if you are interested, I'm having it go through Patreon, just so the management of the members is more automated, as well as I'm trying to use it to keep scammers and stuff out and kind of vet them as well. So if there are scammers going around and things, I at least hopefully can track them, because I have their emails and stuff through Patreon. And so I can get rid of them and identify them and blacklist them and all that type of stuff a little bit more easily is kind of the hope. So we'll see how it goes. I'm obviously just kind of tweaking things as I go along, but yeah, really appreciate all your guys' time. Feel free to join, hit the like button, subscribe, do all that type of good stuff. If you're looking for an exchange, BTCC and BloFin links in the description, all the type of good plugs for everything. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.